Everybody, thank you for coming. Welcome. My name is Mark Rudin. Thanks to Summer Hayes for having me. And today we're going to talk about recording for horn players specifically. But really, this is an intro into just really efficient recording technique, and sort of an introduction into basic equipment and concepts for arranging and some of the tracking techniques that I've used to be, again, I'm going to use this word a lot, efficient, because that's really what being a producer is just years of just refining how you create music, how you create, product out of air, and doing it the quickest and easiest way. And I brought my pretty much what my home rig looks like, because I have, like certain little things are like the most important things to me, not to jump ahead just a little bit, but just because it's right here, you'll notice that I have my stand-up desk here. I have my keyboard with the little lights on it. I have my mouse that I like to use, everything. And we'll get more into depth about all this efficiency and ergonomics here and everything like that. But first, I'm going to start off with a little bit of a quick history of how I got into this. And my background, I am a professional musician. This is what I do for a living. I'm a music producer, I'm a songwriter, I'm a recording artist. You can find my music on Spotify, Apple Music. A lot of my music, I produce music, I play pretty much every instrument needed to create a song, okay? Not just the horns, but bass, guitars, keyboards, drum programming, percussion, whatever it needs. And a lot of my music is used in film and television and advertising. And so, I do a lot of music for that's in the background of TV shows, that's been in ads, that's been in promos, it's been all over the place. But then also, you'll be able to find my music on the internet, on, like I said, Spotify, Apple Music, and everything like that. I started as a trumpet player, and in high school, when I first started like jamming with my friends, I used to always just be really envious of the bass player, because they get to play the whole time, and you kind of play, and then you just sit there and watch. And so I picked up an electric bass at about 16. Started regular trumpet and beginning band, 6th grade, and then went on to music school. I grew up in Los Angeles, but I went to college at University of the Arts in Philadelphia. And it was there that I met some like-minded friends that we decided that jazz wasn't enough for us. We wanted to play music for our peers. We wanted to make songs and sing them. And so we put together a band called Town Hall, which was sort of 5 jazz majors version of a pop band in the year 1999. So, and it was heavy jam band years, let's just say. So we really fit in with the jam band scene. We do some jamming. We were all multi-instrumentalists, so it wasn't, a lot of people say, what kind of music is it? It was like we would literally switch genres and switch all instruments on every song. So it was just whatever we thought was cool, we did. And we were together for 6.5 years as a band. Out of Philadelphia, doing a lot of touring. We lived together, had a van and trailer, and toured around the country and played shows. And we made our first demo on a Tascam tape recorder, where you could it was just a tape player, and it had 4 tracks, and you can overdub and multi-track. Multi-track basically meaning that you can track multiple microphone outputs at one time, inputs at one time, and then overdubbing, meaning, once you record something, you can go back and record something else on top of it. So we had to use that technology at the time, and this was the year 1999. Digital recording had just started coming out, but it really wasn't in people's homes yet. And so when we made our first album, we still had to figure out how to raise the money to go into a recording studio. And it was a lot. I remember we raised $50,000 so that we could make an album at the time, and that was like literally the minimum that we could spend to make a full album. And we borrowed it from a guy named Crazy Carl, and did not pay him back because yeah, I mean, we were a bunch of kids, and so Crazy Carl lived up to his name, and we, we did what we could. We played in his bar a lot. Let's just say that to try and make up for it. And but I'm really grateful for that, because that was sort of my intro into recording. And I'd be in the recording studio, and you'd see the big recording consoles, and yeah, Pro Tools was there, but it was very daunting, to see all the knobs and everything. And it took a few years for me to sort of refine it to like, what is actually happening here? What is the computer doing, and what is the board doing, and everything. And in 2005, we were still a band, and we'd had no more money to go into the recording studio. So by this point, you could buy Pro Tools, and you could buy what's called an M-Box, which was sort of the first version of one of these guys, which is an audio interface. And it had 2 inputs in it, and would plug into your computer USB, and you can record into that. And so in 2005, I got my very first computer I had ever owned, and I bought it for the sole purpose of buying Pro Tools, getting an M-Box, and starting to make my own recordings. And so I went from there, and ultimately the band broke up, but I had that experience of making records and writing songs, and I was just having fun being able to do it on my own. And then I started getting reached out to by some producer friends of mine that I had grown up with, or that I had met through playing in a band for so many years. They would be like, "Hey, can you play trumpet on this song?" I'd be like, "Yeah, sure." And I didn't even have to leave the house to do it. There were times where I would go into the studio and they'd want to work with me, but ultimately I'd always try and push on to say like, "Hey, look, just send me the song, and I'll send you back the trumpets." And at that time, I was playing trumpet and flute, and those were the instruments that I had. And I'll get to that connection that I was going to talk about between the brass and the woodwinds, and how I was able to sort of break that, barrier and be able to play both. And so, that was the beginning of my recording, what we call remote recording career. And so I was recording for people all over, and I started a website in 2007 called vhorns.com, and I really tried to push this. I was at the NAMM show with cards, like, come on. And it took until really a few years back for it to be something that is a consistent living for me. So I've been working at it a long time, working on my connections, and building up what I call my hornsenal. Now this is just a part of it. Hornsenal is supposed to be funny, but this is just a part of it. But I have a lot of different instruments, and every time I get a new horn, it's another line item on my invoice that I send to the clients. It's part of a business, and that's how I've always approached this, and been like, "Hey, you want Barry on that too? Yeah, all right," And so really it started with the trombone. A lot of times people would hire me to play trumpet, and then they'd have to get someone else to do trombone. And I could mess around on the slide trombone, but it was really difficult. I think slide trombone is one of the most difficult instruments to play in tune. Let's just say that. And so I thought, well, why don't I just try one of those valve trombones and see how it goes? It's pitched exactly the same as the trumpet, and I was able to just basically, go right from one to another. It took a little while to get the tone and the embouchure and get used to that, but you always get used to these things. Once you get an instrument, I'll just say this early on, is that, like, don't be afraid to buy an instrument, and eventually you'll be able to play it. I have tons of different instruments in my house, and every single one of them I can play. And at one point, I didn't play them so well, so but after, it's funny. It's like, you think about it, like, you started playing bass clarinet probably in beginning band, right?
Yeah.
And 3 years later, you were an advanced student, so it's like you could do that with any instrument, as long as you got the patience, just pick up an instrument. In a few years, you'll be good at it. You'll be at the level of an advanced student, at least, and as you get older, you have better taste and all those things. So that fits into it. And so so that's how I got into recording, and now we're talking about multi-instrumentalism. And the thing that I discovered, so I was a trumpet player, and everybody knows, almost everybody knows, that these fingerings on the trumpet. C major scale. All right, now I'm going to start from D. Actually, I'll just start from E and go. Anyway, I got to college, and a kid had a flute, and I'm like, oh, let me see that thing. And I pick it up, and guess what the fingering is in the right hand? It's the exact same fingering. E, F. I mean, you could play F sharp like this, or, it's proper, but actually, I have horns where I do have to play that middle F sharp, and like this. So as soon as I can make a sound, I'm like, whoa! I already had the dexterity, so I just, that's just the starting point, and that's all I needed. And then, let's just be honest, these instruments, all you're doing is lifting up your finger. I mean, if you can get a trumpet down, you can learn to play a woodwind instrument. No offense.
Wow.
No, but what takes the longest time is to develop a good tone. And so I just applied the same things that I applied to the trumpet. And I would work on long tones on the flute. And I would work on, just scales and different keys, and mostly just tone. On any instrument, it's like, for what we're doing here especially, there's a lot, you don't need a lot of what you need to play in an orchestra or a big band, because you're working on your own time. So for years, my endurance wasn't my strength, but I always made sure that my tone was. And I didn't need my endurance to be, because if I got tired, I'd take a break, I'd switch instruments, I would do something like that and move on and be able to continue doing my work. Okay, so that's the main connection that I was able to find. And I just encourage anybody to, if you're a sax player, get your hands on a trumpet and start working on it. And it's a very difficult instrument to learn, but it only takes a few months before you're starting to improve. And we're all in the music community here, and so you just ask your buddies for tips and things like that, and you'll get there. So that's a bit of my story and a bit on being a multi-instrumentalist and how I got into that. And I remember when I was a bass player, and I would look at a guitar and be like, man, that is going to be impossible to learn to play. What a complicated looking instrument. And so I started playing guitar. I was 22 years old, and now I can play it pretty decently, being an older fella. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the equipment that I used to record with, okay? Now, one of the things that I like to stress is that you don't need to invest a lot of money to get going in recording, okay? What you need is, number one, a computer. And you don't want the weakest computer you can get. You gotta have something with a little bit of power to it. Now, it doesn't have to be one of those guys. This is literally the strongest computer I could find that Mac makes. Actually, they make a stronger one, but honestly, I didn't want to, spend what I would spend on a new car on a computer. Close to it, I spent what I would spend on a used car on this. And so you need that, okay? The next thing you need is an audio interface. This is called a Universal Audio Apollo, okay? Now, they make a very large line. I almost was going to bring, I have $100, it's called a PreSonus Studio One, or I don't know if that's the name of their software, but I can't remember what it's called, but it's this little black box with one input, and it cost $100. And I was going to bring that, but I just, thought that, just to show how you can use really anything to get the job done. But what I also want to stress is that if you're really interested in it, then, don't necessarily just go for the cheap stuff, because you're going to end up buying something like this in the end. And this is a consumer product. This is not like something that you need in that only a professional recording studio would have. UAD happens to, at this point, make a huge line of interfaces at different entry points. And one of the reasons why I really like using this UAD is because of the software that it includes, and I'm able to record at 0 latency and be able to monitor at 0 latency, which I'll explain when we do the demonstration portion. So anyway, okay, so we got the computer, we got the interface, okay? Next thing you need is a microphone, okay? This right here is a Shure SM57. This is probably the cheapest but most legendary instrument microphone that's ever been made, okay? It's been used by, from every single level of musician. I recently saw an interview with the Rolling Stones live sound guy, and he said that basically they use SM57s on every single instrument, on every guitar amp, on every drum. That's the only mic he uses, and it's the only mic he trusts. And they're built like a tank. You could literally flush it down the toilet, run it over with your car or whatever, and it'll still work. And there's probably some of that on YouTube that you could see. So really, it's all about a capture here. Okay. Now you can do different things. You can get to achieve different levels of clarity, and punch and tone and different microphones and different preamps. One thing I skipped over is in this here, it not only connects to my computer, but it has what's called the microphone preamp, which the microphone preamp is necessary because this has no power. This is just a dead thing, and it needs power to run it, okay? And to be able to create the sound. So you have to plug it into a microphone preamp where I can adjust the level and everything like that. So that's built into here. The preamps in the UAD Apollo are really decent, okay? Now you can spend anywhere from $500 to $10,000 to $50,000, whatever, on a microphone preamp. And same thing with a microphone, okay? But it's all very relative, okay? It's all about the performance in the end. I've seen people record major label parts for records on an iPhone, okay? And just put the iPhone right up and that's it. And it's done every day. And there's a lot of popular songs that are in the Billboard Top 10 right now that were recorded on GarageBand. At least part of it that were started there. I was just watching a video with this artist, Somber, and his song 12 on 12. He started the whole thing in GarageBand. That's very common these days. So that's just to say that it's really about your ideas and your tone on the instrument and your approach and your feel and everything. As long as it's not broken, then you got a problem. But as long as it works, you're gonna be able to get the job done. Okay. So the next thing you need is, for my computer, you could be using a laptop, but I have screens here. I like an alphanumeric keyboard, and I'm going to show you why later, because I have a lot of mapping done in here. And really what separates the men from the boys in recording is shortcuts, okay? It's like you want to use the mouse as little as possible, okay? You really want to get your shortcuts down and learn your DAWs, which brings me to the DAW, okay? The DAW is a digital audio workstation. And now you heard me mention Pro Tools. I used to work on Pro Tools exclusively for many, many years. That's what I learned on, and that's sort of the industry standard. You go into any professional recording studio, they'll be using Pro Tools. You've probably heard of Logic. GarageBand, I just mentioned, is a DAW. This is Ableton, and I ended up, I started using Ableton in 2019 because a friend had it and I saw them using it and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. That does things that Pro Tools doesn't do. Now it doesn't sound better. That's not a conversation, whether DAW sounds better than the other. It's really just about functionality and what you like, and how you like to work. I always tell people, like when they ask about the DAW, like, oh, should I use Logic or Pro Tools or Ableton or what? And I'll say, well, what's your best friend that records use? Because that's how you're gonna learn, is by asking tips from your friends, or what do you already have access to? It's like some people just happen to have Logic, it's like, well, you got it, that's what you should use, One of the things I like about Ableton is that it's sort of all in one. You pay for it once and you get everything, and you don't have to do any kind of subscription or anything like that. And then when they have an upgrade, like they go from Ableton 11 to Ableton 12, it's very inexpensive and it's a great value. And it updates in the background on its own, on its little bug fixes and things like that. So it's really cool for that. And then, like I said before, mapping. I'm able to just open some of my favorite plugins with one key. And I can close it with one key. Yes.
Was that a Neve plugin?
That is an SSL. So, jumping into plugins, we're talking about DAW. What you use, so you have your DAW, you have your tracks that you'll record onto, and then the real magic is in what's called plugins, okay? And you collect, first of all, the DAW will come with a lot of stock plugins, okay? Every DAW has compressors, equalizers, reverb, which would just be in the effects category. And then we can go on and on. There's so many different types of effects and saturation, and different things that you'll be using in sort of post, let's call it, to shape the sound and to make things sound better, really, as good as possible. So this is now the UAD. What's also nice about it is it has its own DSP built in, which is basically, I already forgot what it's called, digital something. It's basically got its own power to run plugins. So like this particular plugin is part of the UAD thing, and it's not running off my computer's bandwidth. It's actually running off of the Apollo's bandwidth. This is a copy of an SSL board channel strip. So if you go into a recording studio and you see those giants, and they just have strips all along, that's called a channel strip. And so this is, SSL is probably one of the most famous, and so that's a copy of that. Here's a Neve 1073. You asked about Neve. This is one of the, they're called models of classic plugins. Here's another one. This is a Harrison, and it goes on and on. Here's a very popular reverb that people use called the Baja Vintage Verb, and as you can see, I'm able to open these with one button. I'm also able to hit record with one button, and that's part of the alphanumeric setup of my keyboard. That's why having an alphanumeric keyboard, meaning you have this part as well on here, is really important, okay? And so that's that. And then everything, I want to close that bottom window. I can do that with my mouse, I can, that's why part of the reasons why I use the trackball mouse here, is because of all the different functions that I have. And this is, again, going back to efficiency, being efficient, being able to just knock this stuff out without having to use your mouse as little as possible. Because, like, for example, maybe like I bring up a new track and I put it in record, and then I go up here with my mouse and hit record. None of that. That's amateur hour. Okay, so that's the DAW. That's plugins. Speakers are essential, because otherwise you'll be in headphones the whole time and you'll destroy your ears. But hey, so a set of speakers, and we call them monitors because you're just monitoring back your playback with them. And again, all of this is entry level to, you could spend endless amounts of money on it. Set of headphones, absolutely essential. And the headphones is because normally, and we'll see how we do it here, you'll have the speakers muted when you're recording, and you'll be tracking with headphones on. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Obviously you'll need the cables to connect them and everything like that. I mentioned the trackball really quickly, but a good mouse is imperative. Yeah.
The headphones, do you prefer closed back or semi-open?
Yeah, that's a good question. So they make two types of headphones, and these are closed back headphones. Okay, they also make open back headphones, which have basically, like a mesh behind them, and they sound really good because they're able to resonate a little bit more like a speaker. But absolutely, I would never use them when I'm tracking because of the bleed that you're going to get from the headphones. So that's why you want to use closed back when you're recording. I have a set of open back that I switch to when I'm mixing. So I'll plug in my open back headphones, and because again, they actually, you can get a lot more depth of clarity with the open back headphones. So when I'm mixing, I don't have to worry about the bleed. I'm just using it to try and figure out, how to make something sound great. Okay. So where are we at here? Equipment. All right. So now we can jump into some tracking techniques and how I do this. Okay. So let's see here. This is my first time, so thank you all for your patience, and hope you're enjoying it. What I did, I'm going to go ahead and this is kind of, now we're going to be in a little bit of audience participation as well. So what I'm going to show you is a basic recording session that I would do. Okay, exactly what would happen if another producer reached out to me and said, "Hey, I want horns on this song. Can you do it?" Okay, so since I didn't want to, a big thing in this industry is discretion, is permission and things like that. I'm using one of my own songs that I recently just finished producing, and I did with an artist named Frankie C. And it's called "Smiling." And so here's the, I have an MP3 here of the song, okay? And it has the BPM on it, okay? So I have an MP3 and then I have a note, a voice note. A lot of times what I'll do is, so the producer will say, "Hey, Mark, can you put horns on this? Can you do your thing, but also I have an idea that I want you to be sure to play," okay? So I'll say, "Hey, okay, easiest way to do that, I don't need written music, that's kind of a waste of time for me. Just sing your idea onto a voice memo, just onto your iPhone with the music playing in the background, and I'll flush it out into what the horns should be playing, And then they'll be like, okay, I'll get some notes. First of all, here's the song. We're looking for this vibe on it. We want to make it sound a little, contemporary. Keep it contemporary. Don't make it too big bandy sounding. Don't make it too, this or that. We want these specific. Sometimes it'll be these specific instruments. Trumpet. We just want brass. Or just trumpet and sax. Or we want Barry here in the verse. Things like that. So those will be in the notes. The next thing is I need to know what the BPM of the song is. So it's written here in the title. A lot of times producers will do that. So my first technique, as you can see also, I have my computer set up so that I could reach my desktop. And I do a lot of what's called drag and drop, okay? So this just opens up to my desktop so I can see what's there. That happens to be where I have those files right now. So I'm gonna go to my desktop. I'm gonna drag the track in. Okay, put it at the beginning of the song. Okay. And so now I got the track in here. Now it says 104 BPM. I do happen to know, because I made this song, that I made the intro at 99 BPM and then it goes to 104 because I wanted this effect of it picking up. So I'm going to do a quick tempo mapping, which is very easy for me to do here in Ableton. I just go to Mixer, Song Tempo, and I'll click on it. This is called automating. And automating is basically when you just write in this information. And so I'm going to put this at 99. And to get it there, I'm going to actually write that. Okay, and then I'm going to put this bit at 104. Okay, so now I have my tempo set up. That way I can put on the metronome and I'll be able to play along with the metronome, or I can copy and paste. That's going to be a big thing you'll see. It's like, oh, you only need to play if a part is just, you need a big downbeat that fall, bow. It's like, you don't have to do that every time, you know, copy and paste it. And that's part of, you know, the sound of modern pop music is that consistency. It's like not all about having things sound, you know, different every time you do it or anything like that. You know, there's times where that's appropriate. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and play the song. So the first step is to listen to the song, and here is the song. The way I did that, that was actually recorded remotely and written remotely as well. I made a track, a basic track. I sent it to Frankie C, and we got on Zoom, and together we wrote the lyrics and the top lines, and then she recorded her vocals and sent them back to me, and I baked it all in, and this is where we're at, you know. But now it needs horns. And so, and as the producer, I'm requesting horns from myself. So now I'm going to set up my session, okay? And as I explained, you know, in the predecessor to this class, I don't record track by track, okay? I use what's called a drop-down technique, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do, I have templates made, and this is my horn template. It's called full horns right there. I'm going to drag it into the session. And right here, I already have, when it's grouped together like this, it's called the horn, the bus, you know. Sometimes basically what we call that is the horn bus, you know, or the drum bus, you know. It'd be like all the single instruments collected together in one group, and I can affect them all at the same time. So as you can see, I have a lot of single tracks, and on each single track, I already have a tuner on there, so I can check my tuning. All these things are very important. Normally, I'd have actually a tuner right here, because that is key to being successful in this business, is playing in tune. You don't want to send out of tune stuff. That will get you unhired or never hired again. So being in tune is important. So I have the tuners on each track, and then on the bus, I have that SSL, which I just particularly love to use because there's a lot of different things. There's saturation, which is sort of like a distortion, which is something that makes things sound warm. There's compression, which compression is basically, it takes your signal and if it's going like this, it squashes it down so it's a little bit more even, okay? And then EQ. EQ is equalization, where you can turn up the highs, turn down the lows, things like that. Okay, so it's got that all built in. And then I have a reverb. This is a model of a EMT 250 reverb, okay? And so I have those both ready to go, and I have my record track, okay? Now, real quickly, the producer, me, sent a note. Smiling chorus idea. So now I got that chorus idea. I'm actually going to drag that into the session as well, because this is the note that the producer definitely wanted. Okay, so oops. Hello. Actually, I'm just doing this. Oh, where'd my mouse go? Okay. Drag it right there. And I'm going to mute it so it doesn't. I don't hear it when it's wrong. But if I hit solo on it, I can hear it and keep going back. Smiling chorus idea. It worked. That's a different Masterclass. Okay. Smiling chorus idea. You know, a lot of times they sing just as bad as I do, and so you got, you know, it's like okay, I get. Let me figure out the actual notes they're supposed to be. So I'm just gonna. I don't need to remember the whole thing. I just need to remember those first three notes. Okay, so I'm gonna go right here. I'm gonna make a little marker so I know where my chorus is, which is right there. I'm on solo. That's the first part I'm recording. Alright, so now I'm going to get a quick mic signal. Now I'm using, one of the nice things about using the SM57 or any dynamic mic is that it doesn't pick up a lot of outside sounds. It's very directional, okay? So I don't have to use the headphones. I would, but because we're here in a master class, I'm not going to use the headphones. But I'm going to go ahead and get a level. And as you can see right here, this is my channel 1, okay? I've got a pad on it. The pad basically, because this is a trumpet, is a loud instrument, a pad, it automatically knocks the preamp down 20 dB, which is a lot. A dB is a sound decibel level, you know, so it knocks it down. That way I can, you know, otherwise if I just had it open, I would just be in the red. And now here's the important thing about getting your mic level, is that red is bad, okay? You basically don't want to be doing what's called clipping the microphone, because if you're doing that, then there's no headroom to work with. There's no, first of all, it's gonna sound bad. You're gonna hear it. You might hear some digital clipping, which is like it's not a good sound, okay? But then second of all, I have no room for putting a compressor on it and EQing it, and you wanna leave what's called headroom so that you can, you know, do things with it afterwards, okay? So what I want is a nice, clean level. We're looking here on this first thing. Sorry, this is, I'm gonna put this down here so you can see it a little bit better. Notice I'm not doing this in Ableton. You know, this is one of the reasons why I really like this particular using UAD stuff. So we're on channel 1 here. So I'm going to turn it up. Obviously, it was a little bit too low. Still a little low. You want a little bit of yellow. There it is. And then I'm going to probably play it up an octave as well. And I might turn it down a little bit, but I'm just going to put it where I could play it in both for now. So that looked like a good level, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to track this when it comes into the second chorus instead of the first. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a loop. Now the track, a little intro, count, I'm going to put the click on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Go back. So now I've created my loop, and for me, 3 is record on my alphanumeric keyboard. So I can hit 3. I'm going to turn down the speakers while I do this, just enough so I can hear it, because I'm otherwise a little bit it's going to bleed into the microphone. So. I'm thinking about cutoffs. It might take me a couple tries. Off. That's what I want to do. A little crescendo on it. Match it. Alright, let's say I want to keep going. Oh, no, not that one. Yeah. So just keep going. Have a good memory of which ones were good. I'll wait. So far, those first 2 were pretty good, but I'll get one more. A lot of times I like to get them right next to each other, so I'll just do it again. And also, I was warming them. I'm just gonna. All right. It's no sense in like going over and over if I know that I already have a couple good ones. All right. So I'm just gonna go ahead, and I know these first 2 were great. So here's the drop. I'm gonna just get rid of everything else. Now, this track is muted. This track that I'm recording on, since this is this right there, see that? That means it's muted, okay? So I'm just gonna grab this, drag it down to my trumpets. And there they are. And turn off the click. Listen back. There you go. And then the first thing I'm gonna do is play that up an octave to fatten it up. That was a warm-up. One. There it is. And now I got my section. There.
So you like recording just your top track. You don't normally record in your template that you made. You're not
Never.
Never. Okay.
No, that's the drop-down technique. Because if I, like a lot of people will be like, okay, I'm gonna record a track. Here we go. Here's the track, trumpet. All right, and then do that. It's a lot of work. And then but I mean, for me, so much of the work is already done by dragging it into my template. My template's made. I don't even have to create a track. Not only that, but they're panned. I don't know if you can see this all the way to the right. Everything is already panned. And what's going to happen is I'm going to send the demo to the producer. I'm going to be like, hey, what do you think of this? And it's already basically mixed. It's got the effects that I like on it. I might do some adjusting. Okay, let's turn this up. Let's see what it sounds like. All right, I mean that sounds pretty good, but let's turn it down. Let's give it a little bit more juice and give it a little bit more, make it a little more compressed and some more high end. All right, no, let's add a little bit more reverb to it. Or let's add some delay to it. Again, You know, I like to just do things with one button. Let me turn down that reverb. And now I have this delay plugin on there as well. That might be a little too much. Turn down the mix knob a little bit. Yeah.
Do you find most people want it pre-mixed, or they want raw stems?
Well, so when we get to the delivery portion, I'll kind of go over that. The reason I'm doing a mix right now is because I'm going to present to the producer, just so I know I'm on the right track and I know he's happy with it, a demo. You know, instead of just being like, here are the horn parts, you figure it out. You know, it's like, no, here's what I did. Here's how I hear it. You know, a lot of times a lot of people have never worked with horns before. You know, most people. So they'll be like, how should I pan this? What effects should I, you know, how do I treat this? You know, and I'll be like, well, I have basic compression and reverb on it. You know, that's a good place to start. You know, so.
Hey, Mark? So
yeah.
Your template then is the color, not the top. So that's
It's
when
here. It says full horns.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but the stuff above it, we're just it's just you tracking.
Yes,
and recording.
and this there's every DAW now has the ability to do what's called playlisting,
Right.
and that's what's happening. I have it so you can see that I can hide this. It's right here. It says show take lanes. You know, if I turn that off, you won't be able to see all those. But I can even have it off, and here I'll just do a shorter loop right here, and just. I just did them all in a row. I'm going to show take lanes or the playlists. You know, it kept them all for me under one track. And now I can just drag all four of those down. I sort of like, you know, I knew, okay, do 2 down an octave, 2 up an octave, that's how I have it set. So now it's in the track. And I will do this, real quickly, I'll do this with every instrument that I record. If I'm tracking bass, then I have a record track, and I would put this down here, and I'd write bass. And that way, the reason I do that is because, let's say, here, let's go on to another part. Okay, so when that drum fill, here, I'm going to make 2 things into one. When it comes to arranging, what I do, one of my tricks that always is impressive, and this is a very easy one, listen to the drum fills. Play the drum fills, okay? So, there's a drum fill. Ba-ba-ba. That's my rhythm. You know, it doesn't matter what notes I play over. But it's like, okay, what's already there? What is the song like telling me to play? You know, what's gonna like sound like a band is playing? You know, what would a live band do? A live band would all play that part together. So. And I'm gonna get a downbeat too. Now, let's say I messed up one of those C's, right? I'm actually going to do it so I can show you. Okay. Well, the first part was good. Now this is, again, all about efficiency. I'm on a time, you know, I got to get this done, okay? I'm not going to just play the part all the way through out of principle, you know? It's like, there's no music teacher here, no one I'm trying to impress. I'm trying to get the job done. Okay, I got to keep moving on. That first half was good, I'm going to keep it. Now all I got to do is... I can drag that down. So that's why I will... record any instrument like that. So if I'm playing a bass part and I just want to punch the middle of it, like let's say I just take this note out. Now I can just play over it and well, I just needed that one note, so I'm just gonna pull that one note down. And this is what's called comping, basically. A composite of just a bunch of different parts, to make it. This is how most people record vocals these days. You'll record like 4 takes of a vocal and then put together all the best little bits, and that's how you get a real perfect sounding lead vocal sound. Cool. So, Derek, you got an idea? Oh, here's okay, so before we get there, and we got some basic parts here. Part that really needs something is this. The post chord. There's nothing happening. Right? What happens there? It just needs a nice, that's when the horns are going to take over the lead. We'll have you play that into the mic. So, I'm going to play the loop. I'm just going to play the loop okay. So you can get. Well, no, come up. Oh, because you're gonna. I'll move this down here. I'm not recording yet. I gotta make this a little bit longer, so I gotta make my loop long enough so that your part is gonna be. So give me 2 of those on the loop here. I needed to get a better level also. So now I've got you at the right level. Okay. So let's try it 2 times. Remember your cutoff. Could you play a harmony to that right away? That sounds good. Okay, so let me drag this down. Also, let me show you, I already have saxes down here. So I'm going to move saxes up to here, up to the top, just to make it easy on myself so I'm not dragging too far. And I'm going to drag those 2 tracks down into the template. I'm just going to go ahead and hit record and leave it, right? So you can go ahead and just try it. Yeah, it'll take a couple takes to figure it out. Here's a quick arranging thing that I learned in college. It's called what's it called? It's like generally you want all the movement to be the same.
Yeah.
So don't go up when the other part's going down. So make it all go down. You know, bo bo da 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 da. So bo bo, the harmony's also gonna go bo bo da 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 down to that lower note. Cutoffs are super important. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll get your check. Someday. Sounds awesome. You know? Then I'd switch over to trumpet. I'd switch over to sax. You know, I'd start just overdubbing it. You know, for me, I actually don't own an alto. I just got a little baby soprano in the case right there. But what's nice is that this horn, and this horn are all in the same key. So it's just, I don't have to do too much transposing. But I did recently get a bari sax, and so I got to, think about it for a second and do some quick transposing. But, what do I do? A harmony, a lot of times, I would say 90% of the time, unison sounds great. Don't, over-harmonize. Don't think everything needs a harmony. That's a good tip right there, Just, unison. James Brown, that's just, all those horns are just in unison. Otis Redding, there is not a lot of harmonies in that stuff. It sounds good, it works, it gets the job done. And, sometimes you can muddy up things a little bit. And the thing is, let's say this isn't my song, what I don't want to happen is the horns to be muted, because they will very easily be. They don't need me, the producer doesn't need me to make this a great song. They want it, but they're experimenting, It's like they're going to know with their producer instincts whether or not the horns are going to make it. I've played on many records where I'll get paid for the day of work, but, they're not going to, but it didn't end up on the actual album itself. They released the song and there's no horns, and so I don't get any credit or anything like that. But, I've played on some really big artist songs, I would be on One Direction songs, for example, if the producer didn't just decide, you know what, or someone else, when you're on a big scale on the major label, there's so many people whose decisions is this song, no horns, no, my artist, no, I don't want horns. Maybe it could even be because they don't want to get a horn section for, their live shows, or they don't want to play with tracks or something like that, So there's a lot of things, but one thing could be that the horns are taking away from the vocal, and a lot of times that's because they'll be over-harmonized or something like that, That's why unison is important. Everybody else here want to try? Got an idea? Here, what I like to do, and we'll wrap up on this concept, is that, okay, give them a lot to work with. That's the other thing, If you want to be on the song and you want to also be someone that, for me, what, like I said, I went to the NAMM show with my cards, and I was trying to get me, trying to get these gigs, of people. I'm trying to convince people to do it, but ultimately, the word of mouth is what got me to be able to work consistently doing this. And what I do is I over-deliver. I'll say hey, you have 3 options for post-chorus. So I'll go to the next post-chorus now, wherever that is, and do something completely different. Also, it has that thing going on in the second post-chorus. It's oh, well, maybe I should get that. Ba-da, ba-da, ba-da. Can you play that, Derek? Ba-da, ba-da, ba-da. So let's track that real quick. Let's find our loop. Make sure you give yourself a little intro. Okay, that's not long enough. Also, don't give yourself too long of an intro. If I did this, it just takes too much time. We're trying to be efficient with our time here. So I'll give us like just a full bar. Okay, gotta make that just a little bit longer. Yeah, right on B1. Yeah, maybe emphasize that crescendo. Okay, now up an octave. So I'll give it that one where I kind of threw you off because I'm like, just go up an octave. I'll just get rid of that one. Now I've got all four, these four. I just remembered, okay, he had 4 good takes in a row. Drag those down to the saxes here. I got alto sax on these 4, so I'll go grab some more sax parts I have. I just happen to have some for other saxes made up. And I'm just doing this to just be thorough. So I'll put yours on their own track. And I'll relabel them. Okay. Great. Next thing I'll do is the trumpets over that. Yes. Okay. So that brings me to my next thing. Okay. So last bit. So we've come to our last section. Thank you guys so much. This is really fun. So the last thing you want to do is we're going to deliver, okay? Now, you don't have to play it perfect because technology is there, all right? So, let's start with this entrance, okay? A little late, right? If I go down to, this is my grid. You can see how I'm making it bigger and smaller. There it's on quarter notes. I want it to be a little bit, it's just a little behind the beat, right? So I'm going to just slide them over a little bit here, okay? Maybe not too far. And then look, see how they're not, this one and this one is kind of off from each other? I'm going to line them up. But sometimes you want a little slop in there. That's why they're getting live horns, you know?
Hire me for the slop.
What's that?
Hire me to get
Okay, yeah. I'll call you for slop. But, you can, it sounds fine the way he played it, definitely like what you would hear from a band, definitely. If you go to hear a big band, there's no way they're all like perfectly on grid together, and that's part of the experience. All right, I might even solo this up. I'll put it on solo. Let me take off the delay here. All right, the main thing is that on this last bit here, this looks really good in time, but see how they all end at different times? Well, I really do want them to end together, very tight. And so I'm going to do what's called you can stretch time these days, and it's algorithms that they created over the years. You're able to take a wave file, which is what this is. This is called a wave file, which is the type of audio file. I don't know what wave stands for. We can all look it up afterwards. But I'm going to take this, and I'm going to just squish it down right there, and make sure that I'm not cutting. I don't have anything being cut off like that. See how there's that line right there that I made? You're going to hear that, okay? So you want to tidy everything up, okay? I'm just going to move that. One other thing when I'm editing, and production is all about editing, is that things can be a little late, nothing early, ever. Early then you sound amateur, okay? So like if like a drummer hits, a big cymbal on the downbeat, you don't want it to be before the beat, but it could be slightly behind, because that feels good. A little early, not so good, okay? So I'm always looking to see like, oh, is something, hitting before the beat? No, that looks pretty good. But here, yeah, there's a couple that are just a little early. So I'm just gonna make those early guys, just push them back a little bit. So I'm doing my tidying up here, okay? Okay, so that's editing, okay? And you're gonna wanna go through and edit. And then we talked about tuning before, okay? Sorry, Derek.
No, that's great.
So I'm gonna go to let's say I knew, let's say I played this, and I knew that that first take, I played it a little out of tune, but I'm trying to get through this and stuff like that. I might play it again. It's better to just play it in tune, but like, let's say it's like super high trumpet thing, which is a lot of cases. Like I only got so much of that in me, before it's like I don't have any good takes anymore, really. I gotta wait till tomorrow or go take a break or something. It's like, well, let's see. All right, a little sharp. So I'm gonna go. I got this little plug-in here where I can just go down a few cents. I can see, oh, it's sharp. It says right here it's going sharp up to about 15 cents. I mean, that's a little drastic. I don't really trust the plug-in. I'm just gonna bring it down by 8 cents there. Boom. Fix the tuning. So I fixed my tuning, fixed my timing. I want to make sure I deliver this like immaculately. And they're not going to know I did that. And neither do they care. They just want it in tune and in time, so they don't have to do this. The reason why I get a lot of the work doing this is because I'm saving the producer time. They could hire a horn section, bring them into their studio, pay each one of them individually, write out parts, trying to figure out what's for them to play and everything like that. I'm being a one-stop shop, and that's a really important thing about the music business today is compartmentalism. Is being like as much of a one-stop shop as you could possibly be. I play all the instruments. I record myself. I write the parts. I edit the parts. I make sure they're in tune. I deliver a product where you basically are drag and dropping this into your session, and now it's yours.
Since you have a little bit of composition, are you doing work for hire, or are you like getting credit for that?
Yes, that's a good question. So people really protect their publishing and their writing in this business, and they don't want to cut. And I'll speak from experience. You don't want to cut anybody unnecessarily into the songwriting royalties or the publishing or of the song. So what does that mean? That means you get to charge what you want. That means it's a work for hire. That means, and depending on, what the budget is. So like I work with indie artists who are just paying whatever they can afford out of their own pockets, up to major label artists, and that means that a company like Sony is flipping the bill. It's not affecting the person that I'm even talking to. They're like, yeah, charge whatever you possibly can, So it took me a lot of time to figure this out. It's hard being your own business. You got to figure out what your worth is, what your value is. And I'll do a lot of sessions where it's like, hey, I only got $200. It's like, okay, well, if you only have $200, I want that $200. I'll figure out how to make that work for me. I'm just gonna do trumpet and sax, 2 tracks each. You have to write all the parts. I'll tell them. Or you're gonna get 2 little, different parts out of it. I'll try and I'll make it work. So because I'd rather be on the album, make the money than just say no, that's not enough money for me. So that's how I make that work. Was that your question? Yeah. And so when it comes to songwriting, never ask for songwriting for doing this. Horn arrangers traditionally don't get songwriting. Like I said, they would rather just mute the horns than cut me into the songwriting. It's like, and in some cases, yeah, I might feel like the horns made the song, or most people, or the consensus might be, wow, the horns really make this song. Well, they paid for it. So that's my take on that. And just being a songwriter, I'm not a fan of. It's a tough ask. It's a tough ask. Can I get songwriting on this? That's not a good question. It's not a conversation you even want to have. that's decided when the song is being made. You know, like in this case with Frankie C, she knew that her and I are going to go 50-50 on all the songwriting, publishing, and master ownership of this song before we even wrote the song. So that was never a conversation that we needed to have. Okay, so final thing is delivery. So the first thing I'm going to do is I have this sort of mixed in, you know, let's say I have the whole thing. I might just send them this chorus. They don't. If there's no horns at the beginning, then why send them the whole song? They know how the song goes, you know. So I can actually choose to just bounce out. This is called exporting or bouncing. Bouncing is when you bounce out your final version of your song, your recording, whatever. Okay, so I'm going to bounce it out. Export audio. As you saw, I used a shortcut. I didn't go up here in my mouse. Export audio. All these things that's amateur hour. Okay, I know the shortcut to get to export. And I have my settings. Your settings are really important. Exporting at 48K, 24-bit. Sometimes you might get a request for 1K, 16-bit or something like that. Generally, it's become a standard 44, 24. And that's really important to pay attention to before you start recording and everything like that. You're going to want to look into what that means. Bit depth rates, recording rates. And so I'm going to hit export, and I'm going to put smiling, MR horns, type it right, and then demo. And I know it doesn't say smiling. I'm a terrible typist. Never use that word. I might put V1, but usually I just put R1, which is revision 1. So right now it's just the demo. It's not even V1. It's just like, hey, here, what do you think? And then I'll start with R1, R2, R3. Because then I'm keeping track of how many revisions I do. And in some cases, I might charge for that. So now I have it bounced right to here. I can listen back. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Then I'm going to go in here. And let's say, because this is easy to do, I'm just going to grab these tracks. I'm going to go to my export window here, and right here at the top it says main. I'm going to go selected tracks only, and now that's going to allow me to export each one of these tracks individually. So that and it's not going to have my master bus effects on it. It's going to be what we call dry. Okay, just the dry horn, and I'm going to go to mono because it was a mono. This is mono stereo. We all know that, right? Mono is one, stereo. If I had two of these guys, I'd be recording in stereo. But we record it, a horn is a mono instrument. So I want that in mono. I don't need the MP3. And I'm going to go ahead, and one of my little signatures is that I'll put one of these, special characters, because if I just learned that it will keep my title of each track. If I could just put a space here, but if I don't put anything, it's gonna say the title of the song and then everything and so on and so on and so on and so on. But I'm just gonna put this little money sign so people know it's the money, and then it's just gonna have my little trumpet 1, trumpet 2, trombone 1, trombone 2. I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Export those. Boom, those are exported. I'm going to go, I have this file called Freshy Fresh. That's where all my exports go to. You want to be organized. You want to keep track of all this stuff. I'm going to put this into a folder. Smiling, MR horns. Drop that into a Dropbox. Now I have a Dropbox link. It takes a second. Come on. Oh, well, because I'm not on the internet, it's not going to create a link. But normally you'd be instantly I'd be able to grab a link, and then I would go to whatever the email or the text of whoever I'm working with. Let's say it's Al Garrett. Sorry, sorry Al. drop in my Dropbox link and drop in the demo. And there you go. And now he knows what to do from there. You know, he might be like, hey, can you also add this? Or can you change this part so it goes up instead of down? You know, or things like that. And I'll go back and I'll take care of that revision. And that's the process right there. I'm done. Then I send an invoice and hope I get paid as fast as possible. Sometimes it takes a long time. It's like things can run a little slow in the music industry, and you just kind of get used to it. So, any other questions?
How are you charging, Mark? By the session, by the hour, or the time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't charge by the hour, by time. I charge by generally like when someone says, "Hey, Mark, like, what's it going to cost me?" I have to ask two questions. I have to say, are the parts written? Am I arranging or not? And do you want full horn section, or do you just want, you know, or how many horns do you want? So what I do is I charge, like, and then it's itemized. Okay, well, I have a minimum rate of, you know, $400 to take the instrument out of the case for a single trumpet, you know, and you know, to play your part. Okay, start there. Oh, you want trumpet and sax, and you want me to come up with the parts? Well, then I might move the per instrument rate down just a little bit. Instead of $400, it's $300 each. So $600 for the horns, $200 for the arrangement. I'm just throwing numbers out there. I'm not saying this is what my rates are. $200 for the arrangement. There you go. Now it's $800 all in, and so on. You know, I play a solo, an improvised solo. That's another line. Okay, I'm going to charge for that. That's IP. You know, I mean, these are the things. You're not getting songwriting, so this is your opportunity to be like, no, this is what it's worth for you to have my IP in your song. You know, so that's how I charge.
Do you include revisions in that pricing too, or is that?
Usually, I you know, it's part of the sell. You know, it's like, hey, as many revisions as you need until you're happy. I like to work that way. Obviously, like at a certain point, if it gets out of hand, I'll be like, hey, if you want any more revisions, it's going to be, you know, I'm going to have to charge you a couple $100 or something like that, because we're, you know, it's like, you know, I always say within reason. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Well, awesome.
Another question.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, please.
So I know some people, they like to like swap mouthpieces or swap instruments for different parts, so it makes like a more section sound. Is that something you worry about?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I have a few mouthpieces that I like to mess around with, and I didn't do it here, but often I will. When I jump up an octave, I'll put my lead mouthpiece in just to get that sound. Yeah. You know, I have, so I don't have multiple sax mouthpieces, but as you see, I have two mics set up here. This is what's called a
condenser?
Yeah, a condenser microphone. Yeah, large diaphragm condenser microphone. This is a dynamic microphone. They're two different worlds of microphone. And so I might record one part on this, if I'm doing a double, for instance, I'll record one on here and one on here to get two different characters. Because sometimes, and actually we are getting a little of that here by you doing everything on this single mic. You can easily do that by like moving a little bit, like changing your angle, but we're getting a little phase issue. But also like to go the extra mile, be like, hey, yeah, I recorded each double on a different microphone and it gets a different texture and character. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, you know, like I said, I have the flugelhorn, I have, you know, the soprano, whatever, you know, all the other instruments that I'll use. Yeah.
Cool.
Any other questions? Awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. I hope you learned something. You could find me at markrudinmusic.com. I'm happy to, you know, get together anytime for a lesson, you know, help get you set up if you wanted to get set up at home with a recording rig, give you some suggestions of gear to buy, because we didn't really talk about speakers and headphones specifically and things like that, but you know, and computer specs and anything like that. But feel free to hit me up. You know, you can find my music out there, and that's it. Appreciate you guys coming.
Thanks, Mike.
Awesome. The end.
Thank you.
Yeah.